Travel Journey, your television passport to the world of adventure, bringing you each week a guest who has journeyed far. Here to present tonight's journey with actual films is John Stevenson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Some months ago, we presented the films of Mr. and Mrs. Maitland Stewart's trip to wild regions of Sonora, Mexico. Well, tonight we follow Mr. Stewart and his very charming French war guide on their return to Mexico. But this time, the Stewarts take us on a journey to the least known area in the land south of our border, to the state of Michoacán. This region of Mexico has all the ingredients necessary to excite the imagination of amateur explorers. It has burning deserts and lush jungles. Tens of thousands of wild animals and reptiles find their home in Michoacán. And here also we find the ruins of a past civilization and of native people who are as colorful as their ancestors. Our episode is entitled The Trail to Michoacán. And Mr. and Mrs. Stewart are here in our studios to present in just a moment the actual films of their journey. You know, not all of the world of adventure and excitement is to be found only across the Atlantic or the Pacific. Here on our own continent, we still find areas untouched by billboards and skyscrapers. As a matter of fact, we've had several examples thus far in our program series, and tonight we have further proof as we visit the relatively unexplored region of the state of Michoacán in Mexico. And we begin by meeting Mr. and Mrs. Maitland Stewart. How are you, Mr. and Mrs. Stewart?
Fine.
It's nice to have you with us again.
Thank you.
And shall we sit down?
Thank you.
Indeed.
Now tell me, Mr. Stewart, what is this great love you have for Mexico? The last time you were with us, we visited Sonora, and tonight we're going to Michoacán.
Well, John, it's a very primitive area. Mexico has many interesting things, and I think Michoacán is one of the most interesting states, at least what we've read, and I think when we got there, we really found that out. They had wonderful animals, and we had a chance to photograph them, and I think it was a very rare opportunity. Usually when you photograph animals, it's very difficult because of the encroach of humanity, but now, in this area, at least we had free access to the animals.
Well, Mrs. Stewart, you've only been to one other primitive area, and that was with your husband when you went to Sonora. Weren't you a little worried about going into the wilds of Michoacán?
No, Jean, I was not, because I have a complete confidence in my husband. He's a very well organizer, and, where he goes, I go.
Well, how wonderful to have complete confidence in you, Mr. Stewart. How do you feel about that?
Well, that's wonderful.
Do you mean to tell me, Mrs. Stewart, that if your husband wanted to go to the moon, you'd go right along with him?
Well, if you take reservation first.
So there are limitations. Well, let's begin our journey then on the trail to Michoacán. And here to describe the action is Mr. Maitland Stewart.
John, this is a map of our 5,000-mile trip into the heart of old Mexico. We head first for the state of Michoacán, where we find the Tarascan Indians. They're a very unique race, one of the most primitive of Mexico. They still use their custom of fishing with a mariposa net, or butterfly net, which I believe they helped develop. You notice the size of these nets. They're very heavy and all for a very, very tiny fish. You'll notice that they're in a circle. They circle these boats in order to corral the fish into the center where they can pick them up with the nets. We're on the island now in the middle of the lake. These are the fish that you see in the lake. They're dried first. They're very transparent little fish and sold like potato chips, as you'll see this lady here, then used in cooking and frying and in placing in tacos with a pepper sauce. Believe me, it's delicious.
Excuse me, Mr. Stewart. We know everything about this fish but its name.
It has an Indian name as long as your arm, and I just couldn't remember it, or even pronounce it. This is the actual frying process, and mixing with the peppers makes a delicious meal. We wanted to try our hand at paddling a dugout canoe and try our hand at this odd type of fishing. These old gentlemen fishermen have had ages of experience, and you see their nets, the large nets, drying in the background. The lake is a beautiful lake, and we had bad weather, but we decided we'd photograph it anyway. And here we are, we're trying to get ourselves in a position where we can join the circle. You notice the movement he makes with his paddle. That keeps him in his position in the circle, and they move to the center, and it makes a circle of nets in which they can capture the fish.
I imagine this is a technique that's been handed down for centuries.
It's an antique, very antique method of fishing, and I'm sure that this is the only people that I know of that do it. Here are some of the fish being actually caught. This is the size of them. You see, it's a very amazing type of fish. The water is muddy, and maybe they don't get enough sunshine to color them. So we have a try at it. Everybody was in the act. We got a lot of laughs, too, because the natives were very amused at the way we did our fishing.
I imagine you could tip a boat, too, wouldn't you?
Oh, if it hadn't been for that man that's helping us there in the boat, well, we'd have been right in the water.
Excuse me, Mr. Stewart, but who's taking these pictures now?
Oh, a very good friend of ours, Bob Schmidt, that went with us on the trip.
And that's your catch, eh?
We caught a couple.
I think you'd be out there a long time before you had a haul.
Oh, they laughed at it. I don't know what they said in Indian. They wouldn't speak in Spanish. This is one of the larger ones that Mary Lou has here.
Is this fish considered a delicacy in Mexico?
Very much a delicacy. You'll find this fish in some of the finest restaurants.
Was this the only spot where this fish is caught?
Yes, I think this is. Now, this is the island of Janitzio in the center of the Lake of Pascuaro. And we do our fishing right close to shore in case we tip the boat over. But no luck. We used too small a net, I think. We did succeed, however, in catching a few lily pads.
Uh-huh.
I dreamt up a little scare here for Mary Lou. I didn't tell her at the time, but the lake is full of snakes. And they're little harmless snakes, but we were going to put on an act here for her. I set up a little deal where the snakes were going to attack me. So I went swimming, and when she saw the snake, well, you can imagine, the lake has a lot of them in there, but they're not a harmful snake. They're like a garter snake.
Well, I can imagine she was frightened.
She is scared to death because, of course, a snake in the water seems twice as dangerous as one on the land because it can move so rapidly and can disappear and you don't know where it's coming up next.
This particular snake is harmless, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's like a little garter snake, we found out, and I was mighty sure of before I went.
Mr. Stewart, you're quite a practical joker. As I recall, you pulled one of these tricks on your wife the last time you were with us.
Yes, I don't know whether this one was worth it, though. She was mad at me for a week.
And I don't blame her.
Well, we finally succeeded in telling her that they were harmless. We brought a couple up so she could take a look at it, and after a while she got so she could handle it without any fear. And this was about the first time she actually had anything to do with snakes. The last time, when we were in Sonora, she was very, very timid towards snakes, and we couldn't get her to do anything with them. But here she likes them. Maybe a surprise is good for people. Later, we flew over to the coast where we were chasing down a legend, the most fabulous legend of all of the Central Americas, the feathered serpent myth, or that of Quetzalcoatl. You'll see a transition of the flight from the cities to the open land and finally to the deep jungle. And it's here that our real exploration takes place. We are on the trail of the god of Quetzalcoatl. Here's one of the temples that was raised especially to him, and he is represented always as a snake, a serpent. Here's the snake, Quetzalcoatl, devouring a man. Now, whether this was used by these native witch doctors to frighten the people into doing what they say, I don't know. We were here to find out a few of those things if we possibly could. One of the most famous of the pyramids of this area, a fantastically beautiful and geometrically perfect pyramid. 365 niches, and each one of them for a day of the year, and each with a specific god that it represented. The pyramid is quite high, actually. It's about a 4-story building, solid stone throughout, and each one of these stones packed by hand, brought from an area far distant from here. Here you get an idea of the steepness of these steps.
These pyramids aren't as large as the Egyptian variety, are they?
No, they're small, but
more interesting, I'd say.
Very much so. I think because of the intricate patterns they built, these people could do. Geometrically perfect stone carving and very realistic. It looks almost Chinese, and certainly as fine an art as you'll find anywhere in the world. Either Chinese, Egyptian, Mesopotamian. This art is magnificent.
So these pyramids are more than just a housing.
All for a great religious purpose. As you look from the top, there are at least 35 more of these pyramids that have never been uncovered yet. Here we go down into the deepest part of the jungle, trying to find and follow this myth and see if we can find any such thing as a serpent that devours men. And actually, as we talk to these people, we find that they have a legend which they still hold to, and they say maybe we'll get a chance to see these snakes. These people tell us that if we take their canoe, we can find these reptiles deeper in the jungle. Also, they say that this jungle has a lot more different kinds of animals. So we're off, John, to see what we can find. Maybe we will find a snake that eats men, as we saw carved in stone.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Part 2 of our trail to Michoacán continues in... Again, it's Trail to Michoacán with Mrs. Stewart to serve as our guide.
Now we are on our way to the jungle to find the animal. John, I can tell you the name on this river because it's not on the map.
You mean this river doesn't even have a name?
No name. Now you can see there's another kind of fishing. Now this man throw his net. He catch bigger fish.
It's certainly a strange type of fishing net, isn't it?
Yes, but he's pretty lucky, you know. Every time he throw the net, he catch a fish.
Well, these rivers must be just loaded with fish.
Yes. Now you can see this egret. It's going fish.
An egret?
Egret, yes. It's fascinating the way he's going to do it. Look, he seems to hypnotize the fish.
Hypnotizes the fish,
Yeah, look at this.
Uh-huh.
You have plenty birds, very fast. It's a beautiful bird.
Mm-hmm.
He lost it. Well, he's going to do it again. It's very graceful, the way they walk. And you have a few pelicans. You see the rainy season bring a lot lily water.
Water lilies, huh?
The water lily.
Mm-hmm.
And for mile and mile you can see this lily. It's fantastic.
They're small little islands, aren't
Yes,
they, of lilies?
And you see the rain brings so beautiful cloud. And the islands seem mysterious, wild. Now we are looking for animals. And on our way on the river we find a few villages. And people swimming, wonderful swimmer. They try to race with our bark.
It looks like they're doing a pretty good job of beating your boat, too.
They are just wonderful swimmers. Happy, too. And you see, people can be very happy. They live simply, just have 4 walls.
Yes, I imagine there's no housing problem here.
No, because the weather is so warm. Now we meet these people, we try to find the snake.
You wanted to find if the legend was true
Yes,
of the...
So we try to find some information among these people. It's not easy because we have to ask many other people because, you know, some say left, right, north, south, to be sure where you're going.
I imagine tracking down a myth is a pretty difficult process, too.
So now we are on the, what we call that, swamp.
Yes?
And now a raccoon. And he
raccoon?
seems to be in trouble. I don't know what is the trouble yet, but seems scared. Oh, I see now. It's a crocodile after him.
It's certainly a very vicious-looking crocodile,
Yes.
too.
So we have to do something about it.
So we're seeing a little of nature's battle, eh?
Mm-hmm. Look at this. He goes so fast, but I'm thinking doing something, you know, to save the life of this raccoon. I'm going to show you what you can do to stop the crocodile. We let him have a little fun before he gets near the raccoon.
Come on.
I hope he make it. Oh, my goodness, yes, now he's climbing the tree.
That must be quite an awful feeling to be able to sit there and not be able to do anything about it.
Oh, I don't know, I have to do something because I'm not so sure he's going to stay on the trees. I'm afraid he's going to fall and this crocodile hurt him.
He looks like a pretty frightened little character.
Oh, he's a cutie. Oh, look at this monster.
I should say.
Look at these teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I hate him now. I have to do something. Now I found a way. The best way is to take this crocodile by the tail.
And this is the same crocodile that was chasing this raccoon?
Yes.
It's all done with cameras.
It's a small one. Believe me, he can do a lot of harm to you.
Mrs. Stewart, you're as much a practical joker as your husband.
Maitland was ready to kill him, but no, I'm against this. We're going to let him go. But you have to be very careful when you handle him because with their tail and their mouth.
Even though he's a baby croc, he's still as dangerous.
He's dangerous, yes. Now, we let him go, but first I want to play kind of cowboy with him.
You mean cowgirl?
Now, a goof. It's not easy to do it. He's not very happy about this situation. He won't get to the river.
Which to him is safety.
Oh, yes, after they are on the water, you cannot catch them.
And this guy was actually the ferocious crocodile we saw in the earlier shots, eh?
Yes. Now, we've continued our trip on the swamp. We're looking for animals. Oh, we see a little deer. It's not bigger than a jackrabbit.
You mean to say this deer is no bigger than a rabbit?
Yes, it's the same size.
The cute little animal, isn't he?
They are really cute, but we cannot go too near because they are scared. Now, while we went on the swamp, we see, I thought it was a spider, but that is a crab.
A crab?
Yeah, they have thousand crab. Beautiful color. It's not easy to see because it's very dark. And now this is a spider. Believe me, I'm scared of a spider.
Do you happen to know, Mrs. Stewart, the name of this spider?
No, I don't know the species.
You're not interested?
I was not interested in what species was. I was just so scared.
A spider is a spider is a spider. Yeah?
I'm scared of spider. It's a big one, though. And we continue our trip on this river. And we see something. Oh, it's a little fox. He's a cutie.
Mm-hmm.
Bright eyes, curious. He's afraid, but he won't know what's going on anyway. He don't want to go away.
I imagine there are a lot of things to be afraid of in the jungle, but there are also many things to see and enjoy, too.
Yes, you forget to be scared when you have so many things to see. This little body is our guide. You see the parrot?
A parrot, yes.
Yes. Oh, the color is gorgeous. Red, blue, yellow. It's fantastic. And this worm, believe me or not, John, is 6 inches long.
6 inch long caterpillar.
So I wonder how the snake be.
And this is not 6 inches long.
No, the worm.
And is Mr. Stewart, what is he up to?
He get exciting. The little boy point. So my husband took the gun. That is a good precaution. You know, in case of emergency. We not very seldom use. You see this snake? He wants to be friendly, but we don't trust him. We have to take his snake first.
And he uses the back of his machete to handle it.
Do you know snake is a beautiful animal, John? It's smooth, a firm body.
Mrs. Stewart, I'll have to take your word for that.
He don't need to look too vicious to me, though. It don't look like he's going either man.
Mr. Stewart certainly knows how to handle them.
He won't do the same thing. I'm not very, very enthusiastic, but when you hold the head, it's no danger.
Oh, really?
No, it can hurt you.
Well, look at you. You've come a long way. You're quite a good sport, Mrs. Stewart.
I kind of like the snake. I think they are very, very pretty.
So these snakes you were looking for weren't so dangerous after all?
No, they are not dangerous at all. But, you know, they have so many, it's much better to go away, though.
So you didn't find the snakes that eat men as you saw earlier in the stone carvings?
No, we didn't find the snake who eat men. I do believe it's just a myth. We did not find any animal who will hurt Maitland or me.
So it was just a myth or a legend after all?
It was probably the witch doctor who tried to frighten the people.
You thought it was the witch doctors who frightened the people to keep their hold over them, probably, eh?
Yes, well, that was probably it, John. When we leave Mexico, we saw Arizaba, the highest mountain in Mexico. It's an existing volcano.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Stewart. It was a treat to take a second journey with you and Mr. Stewart. Now, tell me, you've come a long way as a sportswoman and intrepid adventurer. I'm sure the women in our audience would be interested to know how you managed to accustom yourself to the primitive conditions you must have faced.
Well, John, all my life I have to face many circumstances. And, I didn't find it too hard to live in the jungle. People are wonderful. And like I said, my husband is so wonderful to organize everything, so it's not hard at all. We have our tent, we have our utensils, and it was easy.
By the way, Mrs. Stewart, what kind of snakes were those you were playing with in one of those final scenes?
Well, I think it's boa constrictor.
Uh-oh. Mr. Stewart, did your wife know how dangerous this snake actually was, or is it dangerous?
John, the boa constrictor is much overrated by the Hollywood movies, and they really are not a killer. They prey mainly on small animals, and have never been known to attack man, actually, except if a man should get in a position where he'd bother the animal, or the snake.
Oh, I see. You mean as long as you hold it by the head like this?
When you're handling snakes, of course, you can get bitten very badly, and in case the snake should get a tight grip on your neck, you'd be in trouble. But if you keep a good hold of the head so that it can't get a grip, or you watch the body, then you're not going to have too much trouble.
Mrs. Stewart, I'm sure the women in our audience would be anxious to know your answer to this question. What one luxury did you miss on this trip?
Well, it's going to be strange for you, but it's hot water. Shower every night. I need this deeply.
Did you ever have to use that pistol you brandished in the final scenes?
We take it just as protection, and we've never used it on an animal, and we found that actually you very seldom have a need for it. But if you do need it, it's a good thing to have.
Jan, I do not believe to kill an animal. I love them, and if we are in danger, we go away. We don't like to kill.
What was actually the biggest danger you faced, other than animals?
Well, to an old explorer, you wouldn't have to repeat it twice, but it's insects. They crawl, they fly, they come in at night. The hardest thing is to keep them out and away from you. The time of year that you travel is very important, and we found that our particular time we were there was very nice. We had very little insect trouble. And if you boil it down into one word, mosquitoes, they're the worst thing in the world.
Well, I'm sure anyone who's ever met up with a mosquito would understand that. And you're an ideal couple, and we're certainly very grateful to you for having shown us your fine film. Good night, and good luck to both of you. The trail to Michoacán. And Mr. and Mrs. Stewart are here in our studios to present in just a moment the actual films of their journey. You know, not all of the world of adventure and excitement is to be found only across the Atlantic or the Pacific. Here on our own continent, we still find areas untouched by billboards and skyscrapers. As a matter of fact, we've had several examples thus far in our program series, and tonight we have further proof as we visit the relatively unexplored region of the state of Michoacán in Mexico.
Travel Journey, your television passport to the world of adventure, bringing you each week a guest who has journeyed far. Here to present tonight's journey with actual films is John Stevenson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Some months ago, we presented the films of Mr. and Mrs. Maitland Stewart's trip to the wild regions of Sonora, Mexico. Well, tonight we follow Mr. Stewart and his very charming French war bride on their return to Mexico. But this time, the Stewarts take us on a journey to the least known area in the land south of our border, to the state of Michoacán. This region of Mexico has all the ingredients necessary to excite the imagination of amateur explorers. It has burning deserts and lush jungles. Tens of thousands of wild animals and reptiles find their home in Michoacán. And here also we find the ruins of a past civilization and of native people who are as colorful as their ancestors. Our episode is entitled, and we begin by meeting Mr. and Mrs. Maitland Stewart. How are you, Mr. and Mrs. Stewart?
Fine.
It's nice to have you with us again.
Thank you.
And shall we sit down?
Thank you.
Indeed.
Now tell me, Mr. Stewart, what is this great love you have for Mexico? The last time you were with us, we visited Sonora, and tonight we're going to Michoacán.
Well, John, it's a very primitive area. Mexico has many interesting things, and I think Michoacán is one of the most interesting states, at least what we've read, and I think when we got there, we really found that out. They had wonderful animals, and we had a chance to photograph them, and I think it was a very rare opportunity. Usually when you photograph animals, it's very difficult because of the encroach of humanity, but now, in this area, at least we had free access to the animals.
Well, Mrs. Stewart, you've only been to one other primitive area, and that was with your husband when you went to Sonora. Weren't you a little worried about going into the wilds of Michoacán?
No, Jean, I was not, because I have a complete confidence in my husband. He's a very well organizer, and, well, I just, where he goes, I go.
Well, how wonderful to have complete confidence in you, Mr. Stewart. How do you feel about that?
Well, that's wonderful.
Do you mean to tell me, Mrs. Stewart, that if your husband wanted to go to the moon, you'd go right along with